Hello everybody, it is Ebontis, and in this video I'm going to give you guys as many beginner-friendly style tips that I can in one video. But when we come into like high rank and very specific details about a lot of the minutia, I'll do separate videos about those. I've done videos about some of the weapons previously. I'll probably refine those guides and hide the old ones, but if you're looking for guides, I've done a group of all 14. I've done a separate video for each, and I've also done a video for settings. But one of the first things I will touch on are a couple of quick settings. So when you go to game settings, you can change so much stuff, whether it's HUD or camera or follow or things like that. But there are a couple of things. If you want your health gauges to be dynamic or fixed, kind of a cleaner HUD, you can do that. If your allies are with you and they're causing too much stuff on screen, you can, not display their effects. I would probably turn off Secret Auto Explore. I would also probably turn off Auto Sheathe. That's another thing we'll get to in controls here for a little bit. But the Secret Auto Explore, turn that off. And if you see different damage numbers on my anywhere in this video, or probably for me, it's just because I'm using display width coefficient, you can do it without if you want more normalized attack values, but it's really up to you. I use the coefficient. It's just more fun to see big numbers in my opinion, but that would be why. If you see 90 and I see 900, that's probably why. If you go to controls, auto sheath, make sure you disable that as well. That will kind of save you from not putting your weapon away when you're still thinking that it's out there. And when it comes to camera, my advice is go to page 2, take the zoom, crank it all the way out to 10, and then if you want to turn off camera shake and sway and stuff like that, you can also disable focus camera when, if you click the stick, you actually might turn the camera on them. Sometimes you want to make sure you know your control. And also there's like monster sighting camera, turn that off, because I noticed that what it actually did the first time, that's on the more annoying side than you would probably expect. Also, if you want your cutscenes to have high graphics, but you want everything else to be kind of normalized so your system runs, you can turn the cutscenes up, and if you want to see those high, that's pretty nice. And also for your sound, you can turn the sound up, have the music up, but I would make sure your voice volume is high if you're trying to pay attention to the story. Sometimes the voice lines get a little bit low. Also, they got accessibility in here, change what you need to. So that's a quick run through on settings. Next thing you want to do is customize your radial menu. That is this. So if I come up here and you pick which one you want. Do I want potions, ammo, action? I just made this random loadout one just as an example. But if I want actions, literally I can just go optimal health recovery. Right there, simple and easy. Whatever my optimal health recovery, small, big, whatever I've got available, done. Do I need a status recovery or a cleansing of some kind? That'll do that. I changed this one out to be my secret because I thought that was kind of a nice thing to do. So I can literally just do that. Secret, I'm on. And we're good. And then also like sharpen just about as fast. Like you're going to be able to access stuff so much quicker than you normally would. And you can customize it to absolute like ridiculous levels. So this one right here, I literally just put like world map and random stuff in here. You can go through and find SOS flare if you want to put that on here. This is where the optimal health recovery is, but you've got communications and stickers and all the crazy stuff. You got your full crafting list. You've got essential items like your throwing knives and your whetstones and camping kits. You've got every ammo, armor coating, also consumable items. Put them wherever you need them, customize however you want, set them up, and then when you're good with them, you know what you're going to be able to get to quickly. But it's like if you know, say, up and down are your two main ones, then you're good to go from there. But take time, customize them at some point. You'll thank yourself to get used to those menus because they're so much quicker later on, and it's definitely worth taking the time to set them up. So you're going to be going on a lot of monster hunts. 2 things for prep. Get your items ready and get your food ready. First, we're going to do items. So, and you can do this stuff before you go to Alma. Usually makes things easier so you can just instantly depart on your quest. But when you come in here, what you're going to find is transfer list. You can go in here and craft all the stuff you want to, but really it's the items that you have already made that you want to kind of set up to be easy access. So what you'll find is I can have gone around, picked up a whole bunch of random stuff, found a few things, whatever. I want to have a standard set of items that I take with me wherever I go and has quick setup. And especially if you say you get carded, you pass out in the middle of a fight, you go back to one of your mini camps, you can pop into your, even pop-up camps, reload all your items in about 5 seconds. And this is why I say it takes about 5 seconds. As soon as you get in here, transfer item pouch. Once you're in here, you go to manage loadouts. And what you can do is you can set up basic loadouts that have exactly what you need. So I've got traps, tranq bombs, potions, rations, health potions, and a couple of different pods that are going to be ready for everything. I do this, hit use loadout. My loadout is set to what that is, as long as I've got enough of it stocked. And then if I want to go for gathering, I made even less because all I'm going to do is run around and pick stuff up. This will change me to my gathering loadout, so I have as little stuff as possible. So if I'm running around picking things up, I've got as much room as possible. I have the 2 drinks in there depending on what environment I'm going to, but even I could come out and be like, I'm not going to go to like a hot or cold environment, take those out. And stamina's not a big deal. Literally, I could do that. I just threw some basics in there as an easy one. But you can set these loadouts in. You're also probably going to want some crazy loadouts, whether it's demon armor or barrel bombs or some defensive things like adamantite seeds and life powder. You may need a very intense loadout if you're going into a tough fight. And you could set up so many different loadouts for certain areas, for certain monsters, whatever you may need. You may need things like cleansing, deodorant, for example, and then like cleanser. You may need those for different things that you're fighting. Spiders for webbing, deodorant if you get farted on, those things happen. And you may set up ones like, you may actually set up a loadout and be like, hey, this is a Conagra loadout because that dude's gonna fart on me, you're good to go. But for a basic hunt, I come in here, I set up the loadout, and I'm good to go. So that's step 1, is set up your item pouches, set up your loadouts, and use them because it will save you a ton of time. The other thing is cooking. Now, when you go to grill a meal, you can do it with your regular rations that you're going to be picking up all over the place. And honestly, what I recommend doing is just going to favorite meals and setting up the basics, because you can set up a very detailed meal. You could have your basic meat, fish, or veggies with attack, defense, or some defense and elemental resist. Then you can do additional ingredients that you'll find as you play through the game, but they're pretty limited, so I wouldn't do this early on. You might want to save this stuff for later. And then you can even have toppings like honey. And once you add an additional ingredient, the time goes from 30 minutes up to 50 minutes. So it's nice to have a long meal, but honestly, until you get to high rank and you're fighting some tough stuff, I would not touch anything besides your basic rations. And this is why I set up my favorite meals. 1 for attack, 1 for defense, and 1 for the defense elemental resist. Pick which one I'm gonna go for, and I just cook a basic favorite meal, let it go through the animation, and then when you're done, I'm good for 30 minutes for basically any normal hunt and any campaign missions, about 30 minutes max. So that's why I set up the favorite meals. Recommended could give you fish, but what if you want to attack? I just usually set up for whatever I want, and if you just want to do a one-off custom meal, you can do that stuff here too. But have a meal, because what that's going to do is when you come in the tent, you're going to reset your sharpness, and then if you have a meal, you're going to get those benefits, which are basically free the whole time for the basic meals. And it's also going to refresh your health gauge up top, the green one, and also your stamina gauge. Because if you're out in the world for a long time fighting a lot of monsters or whatever it may be, you may actually lose the capacity of stamina and health up top. And eating those meals is going to top those off. There's something else you can do out in the world. And what I want to do is grab a couple of items to show you what I'm talking about. And that is going to be our raw meat situation. Here. So sometimes you could be out in the world and you're like, I just don't want to go back to camp right now. Or you're in a hunt, you're short on time, and you need something called a well-done steak. So maybe your stamina and health capacity is getting a little bit low, and you're like, I don't really want to lose out on time of doing whatever I need to do. I can make a meal right here. You've got your portable barbecue grill. So what you can do is a couple of things. One, you can come in here and you can just grill a meal if you want to. Or you actually have the option to grill meat if you find raw meat. It's usually off the groups of herbivores that you'll find out there, kind of the herds that are slowly wandering. Kill a few of those, you'll probably find some raw meat. And if you grill meat, what that's going to do is you can usually even just eat that while you're riding on your secret, chasing a monster to its next location, and it will refill the capacity of your health and stamina back to maximum. The way you grill a meal is pretty much the same. The way you grill meat's a little bit different, so I'll show you. The meal is exactly the same. Favorite meals, recommended meal, all that's there. But the grill meat is going to take raw meat that you have and do this little mini game. And what you need to do is basically pull it off the fire when it's perfectly done, and then it's going to go through a mini game of chop, 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 and it's to the beat of the music. So I'm going to turn up the music here for a second so you guys can hear this. And we'll see how accurate I can get. If you get it right, you get 12 steaks for 1 piece of meat. It's like a ridiculously efficient thing. So here we go. So you listen to the grill, He usually flips it over and you wait for it to change color. Here. And then we're going to go for the beat of the song. There you go. Not perfect, but I did get the 12 well-done steaks. And now just keep some of those with you as part of your loadout, especially if you're doing a lot of monster hunting. And just while you're going between locations, maybe chasing a monster, and if your capacity is low, eat one of those and you're good to go. So that's your on-the-go eating. And then, of course, beforehand, your prep eating is very important. But yeah, every time you go for a hunt, Swing in, get your quick item loadout, you know, one of those managed ones that you've got, restock your locations empty, so while you're running around in the world, you can pick stuff up, so just only take what you need. And then make sure you eat a meal, and then also, at some point, when you have a little downtime, prep some of those steaks so you've always got some of those on the ready. So another thing that's going to happen is you're going to run into a bunch of monsters. You're going to have aquatic life if you find the places to swim, and you can actually capture a few fish for random parts that you can get from those. You've got endemic life, which are these little bugs, thunderbugs and flash bugs, which give you certain things like capacitors and flash bug things. You've got small monsters like little crocodiles and birds and flying insects and stuff like that that you can fight and get a few random parts off. Like if you need sharp fangs, you can come in here and see what you need from those. But the large monster field guide is actually quite important. So if you come in here and you take something like a Chotacabra, I can look at it and I can see that it's going to be in the plains. I can see the weak point is the tongue. I can see the legs are breakable. I can see that if I use ice or thunder against this enemy, I'm going to be doing better damage against it because it's not really resistant to it. I can see that poison, paralysis, and stun are also quite effective against it. So a hammer, paralysis is good. Poison's going to be good. I can see the sonic boom will do nothing to it, but a flash pot is good. And I can see both traps are going to be effective against it. Now, if I come down here to Radial, I can see water and ice are going to be good against an electric flying dragon, which is probably legitimate. Stun, not really that strong, but, you know, exhaust or sleep or poison definitely can have some effect. You can see the shock trap is also not effective against a lightning dragon. It's pretty logical in my opinion. So those are actually pretty nice pieces of information to have. Then if you come over here, you can see, I can see the head is breakable and a weak point on this guy. The wings are breakable and you'll break things, you'll get wounds open, and I'll show you guys a little bit of that so you can get parts and materials to craft stuff. But you also can see the tail is severable. You can actually cut off the tail of a lot of these monsters. Same thing here. The tail is severable on the Balahara. So if I come over here, Balahara is weak against thunder, so that's what it recommends. And you can see that I can actually get a specific part. I can get the Balahara tail from the actual severing of the tail and carving it. The broken part awards, I can get the jaw or the skull, and I can also get the scales. And you can see some stuff is easier to get, some stuff is hard to get. The black pearl, that's just going to be random luck of what you get. When it comes to high rank, you can see you've got some other stuff up here that if I carve the tail, that is how I get the wyvern gem. That's the only place to do it. So carving a tail is actually very important on certain monsters to be able to get certain pieces. Come down here to the Radial, you can see I get broken parts the way I get the thunder horns. I gotta break his horns on his head. That means I've gotta bash his head in quite a few times. If I want the wing talons, hit the wings. But if I want, for example, the Dow plate, even at low rank, the only place I'm gonna find that thing is by carving the tail. So knowing what pieces come from what parts of a monster can also change how you fight a monster. And you can also see what's effective against him. And you can also understand if you read through, when a Radial's wing or tail touches the ground while charged, it causes a reaction that produces a mantle of Fulgurite. And that's like on the ground, you'll actually see it. Not only does this widen the appendage's attack range, but it also increases the monster's charging capacity. So make a point of breaking these parts. Their heads may also be vulnerable after a discharge attack. They do a big discharge, they're kind of stunned themselves a minute, and then hunters are advised to bring thunder-resistant armor and water-based weaponry. So it actually will give you a rundown of the best way to handle these. So if you are struggling, look at all this. But if you're also looking for specific parts, dig into these menus and you can usually track down the information that you need. So the large monster field guide, very important if you're struggling, but also if you're looking for specific parts from certain monsters, all of these can be very beneficial for that. Now your map gives you a ton of information. The mini map's nice because you actually have a little perspective if you leave that setting on there. But if you pull up the big map, too many pop-ups over there, you have a lot of information. You can see little hiding grass piles, you can see where bitter bugs are, you can see that there's honey over here, you can see that I've got sleep herbs, for example, which are good for trank bombs. You can see what monster's up. I've got a tempered one up here, but you can also see that he's going to leave in 9 seconds, so that's not a hunt that I can engage in. This one's going to be around for 20 minutes. I can probably take him out. So you can get a lot of information. You can also fast travel if you have mini pop-up camps. I really recommend fast traveling as much as you can. Just saves time and it loads pretty quickly anymore on SSDs, so not a big deal. So fast travel basically anywhere you need to. You can also auto run because as you auto run, you're going to be able to pick stuff up, and I'll show you that when I do my demo hunt towards the end of this. But one of the things you might not know is, one, environment overview. You can see what's out here. You can see the strength of them, possible drops off of them. You can see if any quests are available in the area. You can see if there's any active events going on for a hunting assistant. You can also just kind of look into tons of detail about what's going on in the world. Lots of stuff out here. Bottom left-hand corner, if you hit right on that directional pad, you can see the fast travel list. Go anywhere you want to go. Pretty straightforward right there. You can see the environment overview, same thing. Monster threat level, not really seeing a whole lot of change there yet, but I'm sure somebody will know. Filter icons are really nice though. So if you want to come in here, you can see everything. But if I just want to see gathering, and I specifically want to highlight, say, sleep herbs, I can do that. So then even as far out as I zoom, I know that I've got 3 sleep herbs down there, and that's it. So if I need to go work on sleep herbs for trank bombs, head down here to the bottom south, and they usually have about a 15-minute timer on them, so that's a nice way to just leave that highlight on there. And if I pop out to my menu, I can be like, are they up? Do I swing by? Cool. So those things are really nice. You can also filter things like environmental traps. If you want to see, hey, back here, you notice there's a big giant rock in the sky that can fall on an enemy that I'm facing over there. Or down below, you can see that you've got some stuff that's subterranean. And if I get down here, there's going to be some rocks I can use. Flash flies are going to be environmental flashes, like a flashbang. There's a lot that you can see. And depending on what you filter out or not, you can use like a vine trap, literally hanging off a tree, drop it down. And it's a nice way to, you know, take out a monster for a little while. So use the maps that are there, and you're going to be able to get a lot of information out of them. And then if you don't want to filter anything or go back to everything, bam, you're good to go. Have everything on the map. But if it's just too much to digest, or you're only going to go on gathering runs, filter some stuff out so you know what you're looking at, because sometimes there's just a lot to look at. Totally a random thing, but if you're running along and you see a Wiggy Litchy, pick it up. It basically just gives you a buff to your stamina, so it never hurts to have that on you. Now, when I said environmental things, you have to have your weapon sheathed to be able to use them, but if you look up, you'll see possible falling boulders, and it's nice and glowy. You'll also be able to know where the proper location is by the little kind of dribble of boulders that falls on the ground, so you'll know the right location, because trust me, I have misjudged that before, but if you drop that on his head, it's a really nice chunk of damage, opens some wounds and stuff like that. I'll show you guys a hunt a little bit later, but there's something I want to show you down here. One, as you get later, you might find some random things that you can pick up. Investigation just gives you a little bit of stuff. But there are medium level enemies. So these are the herbivores you can see. They're not really a threat. They're just like old herbivores. They got little penguins on the backs or whatever. They're not a threat. Kill them, you're probably going to get some raw meat. No big deal. Sometimes you're going to see these guys, and there's many variations. You'll notice if I do my little, like, focus mode Slinger, I get nothing on them. Nothing's happening. But over here, I have a sawhorn. So it looks like basically a kind of sawtooth crocodile. Looks like he's taking a nap. But if I'm just like running by, I can actually pick up his sawtooth and use it as a bleeding pod. So what I had previously done is I picked up like a fire pod off the ground or a torch pod, and I can actually use those as damage. And depending on what you're fighting, you can take some stuff out, and he's a little wounded. And again, those are just like basic pods that you can use. But these are the ones, as you can see, you'll get some pretty basic stuff from them. And usually raw meat, that's how you're going to grab it. And I also just wanted to use up the pods so I could show you. But the other thing is, I've got nothing there. But this one, I can just run by. Now, he's not going to be happy about it. He may chase me down. Not a big deal if he does. If I'm running from like this territory to another one and I've got a monster chasing me, not a big deal. But now I've got 3 bleeding pods that I can use on whatever monster I'm fighting. So it's actually nice to just be able to drive by sometimes and pick up some random pods. Also, there's things like thorn bushes. You'll find these things if you find a bunch of thorns and bushes or walls. Thorn grass pods, those are things you can throw, and it'll swap out which one. You can't stock a bunch of them up. But just look for random stuff in the world. And this is literally what I would say do. Like, when you're running around, I just go in focus mode, and you can actually turn focus mode to be a toggle. So as I'm running around in the world or chasing a monster, I'm truly just able to... Right now, I'm holding the trigger, but you can actually make it to where it would just be a toggle and it's on. So if I'm chasing a monster to the next territory, I'm literally picking up everything I do as I go. And this is how it, like, I mean, if I'm passing by honey, or if I'm passing by random succulents on the ground, or anything like that. Now, there are certain things you can't pick up on the fly. Like, I can pick up rock bursts for these. I can pick up, you know, random bugs on the ground or thorn pods. I can do these types of things. And I can even come over here and I can get, like, flow ferns. I can get sleep pods. Make sure you, like, get the right thing. Paratoads are environmental, like, little paralysis guys. Two things you can't actually drive by pick up. Bone piles and mine. You can't do them with your sling, but if you get up close to them, you can actually do the full mining process on your secret. All I did is hit B once and hold it, and it's just going to fully get all the mining done, and then I pop back out. So just press B one time, anytime you're carving, anytime you're... And also that's why you explore, so you can find all your pop-up locations. But anytime you're carving, if you're doing mining outcropping or bone piles, that's the only things you have to get up on. But just press the button once and hold it. But like, I can pick up a dung beetle. I can pick up random succulents. I can pick up dung for dung pods. But over here, bone pile, this one I've got to do manually. But if you're in an area with a bone pile, get it. If you're in an area with a mining outcropping, farm it, because there's plenty of things you can craft from mining. And here in the plains early on, if you head over into this like northern section, once it opens up, there's this area where you can do mining outcropping, adamantite seeds. As you climb all the way up, there's a bunch of ore that you can get, and you can almost craft like a set of armor and weapons from probably half of the ore that you would get up here. But if you just look for mining outcropping, you can get the iron ore stuff crafted pretty early and use it for a decent little while. But if you see mining and bones, farm those, but you got to do a little manual swing by. Otherwise, use your slinger, because the range on this thing is crazy. Like, I know sleeper herbs are over here. I'm like 40 meters away from that thing and I can still pick it up. Some things got to be manual though. So that's just some of the basic stuff I wanted to show you as you run around in the world. Things to pay attention for, environmental things. Like over here, I'll show you the trap. This is what it looks like here, at least in the plains, but they're in other places too. This is a vine trap. And you'll notice, as you get closer, I can just use my slinger and drop the trap. If I'm on the ground fighting a monster, and if I have my weapon out, I can't actually activate it because I can't get to my sling. This is why you would need to sheath your weapon pretty often. There's certain things you cannot do while your weapon is out. I can't sharpen, I can't drink potions, I can't interact with things. So, you're going to have a couple of sheath button options, and then now... And this is why you don't auto-sheath, because you want to control when you do it. I can mess with the trap. If I want to use my quick action bar, I can get a quick sharpen in if I need to. If I need to heal, I can do that. All of these things are while your weapon is put away. If your weapon is out, you can't interact with nearly as many things. And that's kind of the balance of combat. Sometimes you need to run away from a monster and heal. You got to put your weapon away, because if I've got it out, I'm going to be much slower and I'm going to be caught. Especially if I go into this mode. I'm not getting away from anything as slow as I'm walking now. Maybe a dodge roll, but I can't do too much that I need to. So, knowing when to sheath to be able to do the actions that you need to do is important, whether you need to drop environmental traps, sharpen, and also you can get knocked down, but if you're running along and you call your secret, so I have that set up that way, your secret will just come pick you up mid-fight. And even, or if you're knocked down, your secret is a lifesaver. So always like have a quick action for your secret. It may not seem necessary, but mid-fight, if you know exactly what that key is, it could save your life in a moment. But yeah, anytime I'm traveling between territories, following monsters or anything, pick up everything. And then if you run out of space, then guess what? You'll have to figure it out. More often than not, probably pick it all up because you most likely should. More mining outcroppings and bone piles here, so I'm going to get these. But that kind of covers all this random miscellaneous running around the world stuff I wanted to. But also, yeah, pick up everything. I don't think I can scream that enough. That way, when you need something, you've probably got a decent stockpile of it already. Half the time I have the stuff I need on accident, just because I've been doing this type of stuff. Like if I want to craft bone gear, I didn't run out to get bone piles. I've literally just been picking up stuff as I've been going along, and I've been able to craft most of the stuff I need besides like random, very specific items. So truly it is a game of picking stuff up, and that's why also managing your inventory with those loadouts is important. That way you're not just like going from one fight to another and then you're full up on inventory. Dump that stuff off in your camp so you've always got space to pick up new stuff. All right, let's dive into gear a little bit. I'm going to try and touch on some of the highlights here, but again, timestamps are here if you understand all this stuff, but I'm guessing everybody's probably going to learn a little something from here unless you're a Monster Hunter expert. So first thing we're going to do is armor. Armor's got some basics to it. You've got your resistance, which is, or your defense, which is your resistance to like your physical beating that you're going to be taking. It starts low. It gets higher. When you get to higher rank, it gets even higher. But one thing to know is if you have like a mid-level piece of gear, and you're like, I really like this one thing, it works well in my set for whatever reason. But for the moment, it's sitting at like 16 defense. You'll get to a point kind of through the campaign, you're going to eventually be able to upgrade it, and you can take that thing from 16 defense, and if you upgrade it all the way from armor spheres, which we'll get through doing different things, I'm all the way up to 32 defense. That lets me play in another tier of like monster like fight that I'm going to be dealing with. So if there's something that makes your build perfect, try and upgrade it as long as it makes sense. At some point you're going to have to leave stuff behind or find new pieces, but for a little while there are certain things you might want to hold on to, and upgrading them once you get the feature through as you play through the campaign, that can help you kind of keep a set or a build if you're working on a mini one. But more often than not, the biggest thing I would probably tell you to pay attention to is your resistances. The slots are jewels. I'm going to cover those when it comes to weapons, so we'll get to that in a little bit. They function the same way on weapons and armor. But the resistances, sometimes you'll see their minus, sometimes you'll see their plus. And the thing to know is you don't really want to dig yourself in too much of a hole. So you'll notice on the bottom right-hand corner my total status. My fire resistance is -6, water's 2, thunder's 0, and then ice resistance would be 8, but dragon's at 0. So if I'm going to go fight something that's ice, this setup that I've got right now would work well. But if I'm going to go fight something that's fire, -6 is actually probably going to hurt me a little bit. So you don't want to dig yourself too much of a hole, especially if you're like, I'm in the oil basin and there seems to be some fire around. You might want to make sure you have some fire resistance, so look around for pieces. And that might honestly mean maybe you go back and you find something that's going to give you fire resistance. It may take a little while to dig through your menu and figure out which monster is going to give fire resistance, but maybe it's not fire resistance, maybe it's just something neutral. So apparently it was the Kranadath. This one's got fire resist. Not water or ice, but I'm good on everything else, and this is my fire resistant set. So if I put that whole thing on, could be kind of fun. So you might have to go figure out where that comes from or where to get that one, but if you can get that set, that's where your fire resistance could come into play. Come down here. This is going to be low water resistance, but a little bit of dragon resistance. So, you know, if you're fighting some dragons, might be good. So pay attention to resistances. That's going to be part of your build. But the more important part of your build is going to be your skills. So what you're going to want to do if you don't know what a skill is truly come into the submenu and go skill info. And it's going to tell you. So wide range, for example, allows the effects of certain items to also affect nearby allies. If you're playing with friends, this actually could be big. So this could be really nice to help out your friends, and all of these things do different things. Now you also notice this has flexible leathercraft. It's got the hunter-gatherer group skill, and the group is like basically a set bonus for this. And you'll notice I have 1 of 3 pieces listed here. I would need 3 pieces active on my character to be able to get this benefit, but it increases gathering speed and prevents knockback when gathering or carving. I probably wouldn't do too much gathering or carving in the middle of a fight, but in the event you need it, it's there. Come down here a little bit later, you can see we've got a couple other skills. Poison resistance reduces the number of times you take poison damage. Bind resistance allows you to recover if you're frozen or webbed. And then again, we've got a set bonus on this piece. If I'm wearing 3 pieces from the Neopteran alert, you can see this one increases the amount of honey you gain from gathering points. Honey is used to make max potions, which you're going to be using all the time. So if you have a gathering set, this could be part of it at some point. So paying attention to the skills can be really big. Stuff like evade window extends the invulnerability period when evading. That could be huge for somebody who's like jumping around a lot and you're trying to dodge and not take damage and you're playing like more of a glass cannon build. If you could get this high, massively increases your invulnerability window, could be huge. There's also talismans where you can get some of these skills from, so eventually you can get some of this from different places, but if you go through the Harambe, I've got evade window, evade window, evade window, evade. So if I wear the whole set, I'm going to have that skill at level 5 and I'm going to be pretty stout. Now, if you have recovery speed capping out at 3, just because I'm wearing 5 pieces doesn't give me extra. If there is recovery speed as 3 boxes and I fill all of them up, you've got the max from it. This one has 5 spots, so I would actually have to wear all 5 pieces to be able to get the full level 5. But if you wear the level 3, you would max this one out and get level 3 here. So that way you could mix and match, or depends on what you find important. Again, here's another set bonus. Makes it easier to mount monsters and to wound them once mounted. So if you do a lot of mounting, I could picture somebody like an insect glaive bouncing around, jumping on their back kind of thing. Here you go. Easier to mount them means you get to do it more often. Then when you're back there, wounding them happens faster. You're going to be like tearing up wounds really frequently with this. So this Harambe set could be really good for an insect glaive person, even though it's like mid rarity level. You might upgrade this for a little while till maybe you get something high rank, because this works really, really well for your build. You also notice though, like the resistances, if you're fighting something that's fire or thunder, you might have to swap off of this one, because if you go full set, I'm going to be minus 15 and minus 10 on thunder, but my ice resistances would be 35, and I would be pretty resilient against something like that. So that's why you might mix and match, change up what skills you're getting, or change up what resistances you're getting. So that's armor in probably way too much detail, since I said I would keep it short. Now let's talk about weapons. Alright, so I talked about the skills, so I don't need to go into that quite as much, but your weapons are going to have your different skills, whether it's critical element, master's touch. You've got so many different skills in all of these things, and depending on the weapon, you might have different skills that are related to weapons that other weapons would never see. Like ammo stuff would never show up on a greatsword, and so forth. But basically the way this works is you have your basic attack power. So take this one for example, 468 attack power. That's how much damage I have potential to do. If you have the setting change where you see with coefficient, that's why I have the big numbers. If you see 90 and I'm over here at 324, that's why it's just that setting. Affinity. What affinity is a chance to crit or blunder. If it's positive, it's a chance to crit. If it's negative, it's a chance to blunder. Basically what that means is a crit is a 25% stronger attack. A blunder is a 25% weaker attack. Let me go down here and show you one of these with a negative affinity, because I know there's one around here. Here you go. So my normal attack damage is 612. Then my affinity is negative 10%. What that means is I have a 10% chance that I will blunder an attack. That 10% is going to only apply to the attack. The elemental damage that's dragon on this one is 140 is separate from any affinity blunders that would be there. So even though 10% of the time I'm only going to do 75% of that 612 normal attack damage, that 140 for dragon is always going to be hitting. So keep that in mind. We'll talk about sharpness a little later, that affects it, but overall that's kind of what that means. If you have a positive affinity like this, then it's a chance to crit. Then it's that 504. Notice these are in the same tier. This is 612 for the attack power. This is 504, but this is a chance to crit. This is a chance to blunder. So they do kind of the balancing act with affinities and elements and that type of stuff. And then sometimes you just have straight up raw damage. 612, straightforward, not a whole lot of change to it. But again, this would be 504. 10% of the time, it might be 25% stronger, which is not nothing. And then it would still apply the dragon 260 on top of that. So that's actually a pretty cool one. Definitely one that would be powerful. And if you get up in here, we're talking some substantial damage bonuses. So depending on what the build is and what skills are, you might do some fun. But also you'll notice, like if I come here, I'm looking at offensive guard. Temporarily increases attack power while executing a perfectly timed guard. So if I get a perfectly timed guard, which I can do with my shield, then while that's active, and then I'll get 10% bonus to attack. Something you have to time, something that's not active all the time. There's always a little give and take in balance. They're pretty reasonable, but I'm sure people will find some broken builds. So, how does attack? Affinity, plus or minus. Plus is a crit, minus is a blunder, 25% either direction. And the element is just that type of damage that's applied. Then we get into your sharpness gauge. When you start out, your sharpness gauge may look something like this with your first weapon. You got your red, orange, yellow, and green. When you do a sharpened sequence, you will cap out at the full bar, but you're going to see this little half bar that extends past it. There are jewels and skills that can give you more sharpness gauge, and it basically is 50 more points on the sharpness gauge, and that's what that shows, is what potential, but with skills and other things, additional sharpness you could have. But right now, just worry about the full gauge, especially early on in the campaign. Jewels come later in high rank as it is. So, green, what green means is... no, sorry. Green is going to be your standard sharpness when you go full sharpen on most weapons. I think bone is the only one that basically starts a full sharpness sequence when you're done. If you've sharpened, you're at yellow. So yellow really is where you start. It means your physical attack, your base level, is going to do 100% damage. So as long as you maintain yellow sharpness, you're going to be doing 100% damage. Up here, green is actually going to be 105% physical damage. And then when you get down into yellow, then you'll be at 100% damage. If you get down into orange, it is 75%. And if you get down into red, it is 50%. So my advice, especially early on, you might be sharpening a lot. Later on, you'll notice those gauges are much longer before you get to orange from a full sharpen. So as you get farther in, sharpening is less of a worry, especially as you can sharpen while you ride on your secret. And when you're going from a monster like where they're at to their next location, that can also allow you to generally have a good time to sharpen in there and potentially have like a health potion. And that way, when you get to the next area, you're fully sharpened, you're healed up, and then you're going back into the fight. The secret really helps actually quality of life stuff quite a bit. So green is 105%. Then if you get up to blue, you're going to see now we're at 120%. These are higher tier weapons. They're going to be specialized gear. And, you know, this is higher rank stuff that you're going to get up to. But that's actually pretty cool. The thing to know is if you have element damage, the blue gives your element damage just a smidge over 100%. Green is actually 100% element damage. And then yellow is where element damage actually starts to drop off. So that's kind of why something like bone, you'll notice the sharpness isn't really a big deal. Whether it's green or yellow, you're doing most of the damage. But if I come down here, I want to keep it in blue or green for my ice damage. Otherwise, if I get to yellow, then my ice damage actually starts to fall off. So that's where you got to pay attention to what type of weapon you're using and what your sharpness gauge is going to be doing. Some are going to be longer, some are going to be shorter. This one's got water and it's only got green. So I'm not going to really get to enjoy that full element of water all the time. And it's a minus affinity. So while this is rarity 5, I'm getting some trade-off for the water damage here with a short sharpness for green and also that affinity causing blunders every so often. So again, give and takes on all these numbers. They tend to balance out reasonably well though. So biggest thing for sharpness, keep it out of orange. Everything else is usually going to be mostly gravy from there. The only weapons that are going to have defensive bonuses are the Chotacabra ones that I have seen. Everything else is just defense bonus 0. So it's just one of the random perks of an early monster. And I will tell you, you can fight the Chotacabra a couple times early on, make yourself a Chotacabra weapon if your weapon style has one, and you get a little bonus to defense when early on 15 points of defense could be huge. Right now, 200 to 222, much less noticeable than early on. It could go from 10 to 25 at a like level 1 monster. That would make a difference. So later on, that defense bonus is not really a big deal, and that's the only weapon that has it. And as you saw slots, those are going to be jewels. So let's talk about those when I go for equipping. So my weapon that I actually have been using has been this one right here. And you'll notice when I come out here and if I hit right on the D-pad for jewels, I've got a level 2 slot and a level 1 slot. And basically you'll see the jewel, and then below it, it's got little triangles. That's level 2. Single triangle is level 1. Single triangle for the armor, also level 1. So for level 2, I actually have, here in the level 2s, I have a handicraft jewel. So you'll notice the sharpness gauge on the right-hand side of the screen. When I go for handicraft, that's going to give me level 2 sharpness, and that's going to give me plus 20 on that sharpness gauge. So it's going to let that blue meter be 20 points longer than it normally would otherwise. So that's actually just out there. And then you also notice right now I have 0 affinity, so I get no crits, no blunders. I'm just straight up normal damage. But if I go for expert, now I've got a 4% affinity. So I'm doing physical damage, but every so often, not a high percent chance, but 4% is better than 0. I can get a chance at a crit, and that's that 25% bonus. But guess what? If I do that expert jewel and I level that jewel up, or I get a better jewel and maybe I get a talisman and I get that critical eye up to level 5, I have a 20% affinity plus that could really help me out. This can also be something that could help you cancel out a negative affinity, because maybe my weapon's negative 15, but I don't want to have those blunders all the time. Well, maybe I lean into expert or critical eye across like my armor, my weapons, my talisman and stuff, and I can cancel some of that negative affinity out, so then I'm not losing out, and my weapon's going to be much more potent all the time. So it's just something to consider there as well. So if you have like an element and a short sharpness gauge, you know, the handicraft could be nice, and there's going to be a point where you get multiple jewels doing different things on here. Same thing with armor. If I come in here, I could throw, you know, fire resistance jewel on here, and that can help balance me out. Thunder resistance, got one of those. That gets me to +3. So now the only thing I'm really lacking on is Dragon. That's probably my lowest one. So my resistances are reasonable, and that's how you're going to be able to get some of these. So the higher you get in ranks and unlock jewels on every single piece of gear, your build is going to be so custom, very few people are going to have anything that's exactly the same unless you copy somebody online. So have fun with your builds. There's a lot of stuff when it comes to weapon and armor, but there's one more piece I want you to not forget, and that's the Talisman. Now, I think I got the pre-order bonus because I got a code from Capcom, so I got like the deluxe edition. It came with 1 Talisman. But I will tell you, craft something. Easiest ones I can tell you to craft are these 2 right here. Easy monsters to farm, and if you fight them once and you're breaking parts, you're probably bound to see these. Deshugama Claw, Balahara Shell and Skull, some ore, so mining outcroppings, or Chotacabra Scale, Chematrice, and Labarina. You're going to see these early on. Not that expensive. Put one of them on because they're simple and they're a good place to start. Either a boost to your defense, or a Divine Blessing, which, you know, every so often can reduce damage by 15%. Well, when you upgrade these, notice my Defense Charm is trying to get to level 3, and my Blessing is trying to get to level 2. If I can get that even higher, that's going to give me that higher tier, 30% or 50% reduced damage. Divine Blessing can save your life in a really bad spot. So that is not a bad one to go with, but all I can tell you is craft some Blessing early on. Maybe you just like, I need to cover my resistance here. So if I do a Thunder Charm, I can make that right now, put that on, and at least all my resistances would be positive. So there's a lot of ways to balance everything out, but don't forget about Talismans. You'll probably get a little prompt at some point, but just remember, make one and don't forget about it. Finally, your Palico will matter. Early on, you're going to have some basic stuff doing 2 damage and some blunt attacks, but if you come down here to, say, like, Rampompolo or Balahara or Lalabarina, you're going to notice now I've got a little bit more damage, melee and ranged. I've got severing potential because it's a sword, and I've also got paralysis on the weapon. I can actually have my Palico, occasionally when it's doing some damage, eventually maybe trigger paralysis just out of nowhere on an enemy, gives me a free damage phase. But I can also do water damage if something is weak to that. I've got poison or sleep or whatever it may be. So if you're going against something like a Radial who's weak to ice, throw an ice weapon on your character and you're going to be able to do more. You can also help your resistances on your Palico, so maybe they're a bit more neutral, kind of like mine are at the moment. There's not really any skills or anything to that, so it's mostly managing resistances and then defense just so they can last longer in fights and eventually get up to high rank and mess with some fun stuff up there. Like the high rank Lalabarina, melee damage 24, range 30, paralysis 20, affinity 15%. Not too shabby for your Palico doing some damage for you. So don't forget to upgrade your Palico. I waited way too long, and let's just say I took them from like basically doing no damage to a noticeable difference. So don't forget to upgrade your Palico. They're with you too. So I think that covers weapons, armor, affinity, sharpness, skills, defense, resistances, kind of bouncing those numbers around, talismans, and Palico equipment. So I think that's like everything for Gemma. I know it's a lot in one section of the video, but there's a lot of systems right here with the blacksmith because half the game is crafting stuff from monster drops and making your gear sets and everything. So now on to the next piece. This is just a small piece of advice, but do your side quests. Every so often characters are going to have this little yellow icon, whether it's a random NPC, maybe it's your cat. I've had to do quite a few side quests for once you get through kind of your first roll of credits. But side quests are going to usually give you something, an unlock, some progression somewhere. My advice is just make sure you do them. And also, like talking to Gemma, she might have some random quests for you. Go do a thing, come back. You might get a talisman or other things. Just talk to your main NPCs like Smithy, and then if anybody's got an icon, it's usually go hunt a monster, do something. But side quests and any of your main NPC quests, I recommend doing all of them. You'll hunt plenty of monsters, you'll be able to farm whatever you need, but do your side quests, knock them out early and fast, so that way you unlock progression, talismans, basically anything that you might need for bigger fights later on. You don't forget about anything. So any side quest, any icons that you've got, do those. And if you pull up your map, you can even go to the world map and be like, I've got somebody wants to talk to me here. So that's a nice thing to see, that I've got 2 people that want to talk to me. If that's the case, I've got like other things that could be need to be talked to as well. So if somebody needs to talk to you, my advice, go talk to them because something probably needs to happen. All right, so the final thing I want to show is a basic monster hunt. I'm going to do it against the Chotacabra, and the main goal that I want to do with this monster hunt is I want to show you some of the monster actual like mannerisms, whether they're tired. You can see the little icons that we'll be talking about. All of that stuff I do kind of want to point out to you guys. So I'm going to put a few things on screen a little bit bigger so they stand out. So we'll see if that actually helps a little bit. But either way, basic setup here, grill a meal. I'm going to go for defense so I don't do too much damage and cook it too quickly. Cook the monster, not cook the meal. You can cook the meal pretty fast. So when you go to set up a fight, I'm on a private, setup here, so I'm just kind of doing a solo thing. Optional quest, come down here for a fight. I've already prepped, so I can just go straight to depart, and we're gonna go. But I want to see if I can show you guys mounting a monster, which you can do after you've done some damage to the monster, and you can jump off your secret to do it, which is nice. I'm gonna try and show you guys trapping and a capture, just so you guys can see how that works, and also see if I can try and make the monster tired, which is something you can do, and you'll see them like, there's a little like drool icon, and also when it comes to like what the icon you're looking for when they're actually near death. They don't have a health bar, but you'll notice even in the bottom corner right now on screen, you guys can see, I don't think I need to blow that up. You can see he's got a normal looking blip like the EKG for a heart rate. You can see the little blue bar comes across, nice little heartbeat. He's doing pretty good. Later on when he's close to death, that thing is near flatline, which is kind of the whole point. So, as we work through this area, you've got these little bugs. I always like to kill them or at least not get them in the way. If they do get to be in the way, I tend to try and kill them first. So we're going to go with those first just so I can kind of make sure they're not an issue. And then some of those little numbers you saw, the numbers that had the little purple line above them, those are the crits. And that's what comes from even my little 4% affinity that I've got. That's what those numbers come from. And again, just every so often they're going to show up. There we go. We're good. Okay. So he should be around here. First thing is, when you go for a monster hunter fight, you can actually sneak up behind some monsters. You can also use your ghillie mantle to go invisible. You could also do things like use the environment like flash flies, or you could drop a rock on their head. You can kind of start the fight in multiple different ways depending on where they're at. But sneak attacks are a nice thing to either get out of a tough situation in a fight, so that ghillie mantle to go invisible, or to sneak up behind them. So sneak attack's how we're going to start this one, and it's usually a big chunk of damage. Takes some minutes to actually get into things. So I'm going to try and go more defensive on this one to wear him out. So we're going to try and go for some blocks. And I'm also going to hopefully show you guys a power clash here so we can actually see what that looks like. If you do enough blocks, you should be able to let that happen. That's 2 of them. So you can see my Palico keeping him kind of annoyed over there, which is always helpful. That's 2 big blocks that I've got so far. Now again, I didn't time that one right for the dodge, but we're doing okay still. And again, just starting these fights is really just learning the monster mannerisms so you can know when to dodge. He does a little butt wiggle when I know he's going to do that. He does that little drag across the ground. Usually I can kind of time that one a little bit better. Palico's kind of annoying him right now. That was a critical as well there. And again, he's going after the Palico, so I know that one's not going to come down on me. This one is, and that's a power clash. Okay. So now you kind of like, if you keep hitting that fast enough, you can actually follow through with that one. And that's how I can get into one of my special moves that I can do. Now, what you're going to look to do is try and open wounds on an enemy. So you want to try and focus on hitting them in their weak points, their breakable points. And you see his back heel right now. You see that little white spot, almost like exposed skin. If I hit it a couple more times, I should be able to open a wound back here. That's the little butt wiggle to a dance. And now you see that I'll probably be able to get a wound open. Now you can see that spot went from white to having that little red gash on it. That's my Palico actually just setting a random paralysis trap. So if you go into focus mode, you'll see the wounds glow bright red and you can do your focus attack. And that's usually going to do kind of a special attack that will allow you to do some kind of wound breaking ability, whatever your attack is. And then you'll be able to do some type of damage from there. Now my goal is to just kind of pump him full of damage as much as I can. Now if he's going to run away, there's not much I can do. What does he do? Oh, he jumped up there. So now that I've got basically everything loaded to the max here, I can really unload some damage. Now I just hit the wound normally without doing the focus attack, so I was able to actually just break the wound anyway. And again, just if he reaches up like that, I know I need to roll out of the way because I know something big is coming. But if I'm just unloading big damage on him, sometimes it's worth just trying to go for the shot because sometimes you might stun him anyway. If there's multiple wounds open, I can go for the wound attack. And then I can go for the big spin. I've got so many wounds open right now. And then he's just hurting, because I'm also overpowered for him, so this is a little unfair. I'm trying not to actually kill him before we get to him getting tired. So we'll see if I can actually get him tired. So there's a wound that's open. You can kind of see that one right there on his front leg. And I can go for that one. Again, another wound attack is kind of a way to stagger them in the middle of one of their attacks. Sometimes you'll flip them over, but it's still a good thing to do. And you can usually kind of mess him up pretty good. But knowing his attacks, like I know his butt wiggle means he's going to jump in the air. If he does that here, he's going to charge me that way. I got a good block that one. So a lot of this is learning the monsters. Butt wiggle, jump, block, and then that one's another block that I can do. So if I can wear him out, he's going to be really slow and exposed. But I also, look, he's got a wound on his booty. So I'm going to go for another wound break hit here. And all of these wounds that I break, you'll notice I'm getting wounds broken. I'm getting parts from the monster. This is part of what we're going for. Now, you also notice his heart rate meter down there. It's got a red to it. So he's going to be actually a little enraged right now. So he's kind of pissed. And then if he goes from enraged to actually kind of taking a bit of a beating, he might actually slow down. He's definitely not happy with me. So that's one of those where if you see that heart meter being enraged and it's a big monster, you can also use environment effects. Like he's blind now, so I can come back here if I need to. If I need to go for a heal, I can go for optimal heal recovery. I don't even need to heal, but I can go for a sharpen if I want to be optimal. And he's blind, so he's just running around. My cat's keeping him distracted. Not much is happening to him. And he doesn't know what he's going after here. He's trying to shake off the blindness. I'm going to go for a bigger shot. Now, if he's going to run to a different area, that's probably fine. But we'll chase him down. And again, this is a point where if I got my secret, this is a perfect time for me to call my secret. And if you need health, it's a good time to heal. If you need to sharpen, it's a great time to sharpen while you follow. And also, pick random stuff up along the way. If you're running by anything, pick it up. I literally pick up so many things while I'm running between locations that this is where I've got half of my materials from. And remember, if you're interacting with environment stuff like dropping boulders down or interacting with traps, your weapon has to be sheathed. You cannot sharpen while your weapon is out. You can't use potions. You can't do much while your weapon is out and you're slow. But if I want to drop a trap on his head, I totally can. And he is now trapped. So I can literally just come in with a big attack while he's trapped. And I can just use this to get some nice big shots on him while he's in trouble there. And that's going to really slow his aggression down on me. And I can get a nice, good, kind of cheap shot in on him almost. So what I am trying to do is get him to tired state without actually killing him. Sometimes kind of hard. He's going to be a little angry here. Jump. Block. And that's just another one that I can do. And eventually I'm just kind of slowly trying to whittle his health down. Trying to see if I can truly wear him out. That's another block. Okay, so now he's actually he's trappable, but he's also in that weak state. Notice he's limping, he's going slow. Oh, if that monster kills him, that won't be great. But he's trying to get out of there. He's not doing so good. Now you'll notice he's actually like falling down, but they're fighting each other, so this isn't smart. If you ever need this to like change and you're like, I need to get the other guy out of here, you can fire a large dung pod on the whatever you're fighting, and that'll cause others to run away. So I need to load this in and then fire the dung pod on him, and that's going to cause other things to run away. That's a nice way to kind of manage that. Usually you'll get the other one to run away. They don't want to be around something that smells like that. And now you'll notice he's running slow. His heart rate is red because he was fighting that guy, but he's also got the little skull icon on the mini map that you can see. And you can even pull up the big map and zoom in, and you can see there's the little skull showing up next to him. He's struggling. He's going to try and go back to one of his little home bases and try and actually, survive. And there's different things you can do at this point. As he's in the kind of that dead state, you can do, if he goes to sleep, like he really goes to his home base and he goes to sleep, you can actually trank him and trap him. I'm going to try and jump on him, which will probably work. Nope, it actually didn't let me. But that's one of the ways, if you do enough jumping attacks, you can usually get a nice usually... There you go. So now I've mounted him. So what you'll notice is when I mount him, he's going to try and shake me off. So when you get that vignette on screen, he's trying to do whatever body movement shakes me off of that body part specifically. Same thing there, so I'm going to jump back and forth. If you're on their head long enough, they're going to try and run you into a tree or a wall or something. So you're trying to hop back and forth long enough so you open these wounds so they're nice, big, and glowing. So this skin's almost there. That one's open. If I get on his head, that one's going to open that wound. I've opened the 2 wounds I can because he's big. Some monsters will have 3. And you also notice, look at his little heart rate counter down there. He's in yellow right now. And we're still doing okay. And if he goes to shake you off, you can also brace and just hold on. So if he's trying to shake you off, and you can see he's trying to really shake me off based on that little meter down there. And then if I just want to go for a finisher, while you're wounded, you'll do whatever special move you've got. I might kill him here, I don't know. So pretty close. Now, if I want to go for a trap, what I can do since he's on the ground, I can go for tranks since I know he's standing still. You need 2 tranks and a trap to trap. And then the shock trap over here, I've already tranked him, but my Palico set out a trap, or I could set out a shock trap, and he's trapped. So that's a capture. If I wanted to kill him, what I probably should have done is go after that final wound first, which would have allowed me to get maybe 1 more part broken off, but because he was so close, capturing him will get me 3 more, and then the fight's over. You could capture if you need to finish a fight quickly, if you're running out of time, maybe you're just worried about you running out of health or anything else, and that's another time where capturing can be beneficial just to get it over with. But a lot of the times you can break them, all the parts that you possibly can, and then you're also still going to be able to carve afterwards when they die. You always carve all the monsters you can to make sure you get all the parts you can. Certain things like will come off of, like certificates can come off of capturing. You might get more of one thing than the other, but you also might need to spend those last bits of health trying to chop a tail off if you're trying to, say, sever a tail for a specific part like we talked about from the Monster Hunter guide. So all of this stuff will come in. And again, I know that's like a 10-minute fight, but just trying to explain all the different nuances too. We did mounting, we've got the sneak attack in there, wounds opening up, kind of understanding blocking, there's a power clash in there, so actually managed to cover quite a bit in that one, so hopefully you learned something in there too. So let's head back to kind of where we were, and we will wrap this thing up, which I think this is kind of the end of the video. It was kind of good to get the mounting in there so you guys could see that as well. But yeah, if you're trying to mount them, it's the number of attempts that you get to mount them. So if you're like trying to mount them and open up some wounds on the back, jump on your secret and do a couple jumping attempts at them. If you jump in the air, then hit attack, or you can actually do a dismount attack, either one. So if I come jump on my secret, I've actually got a dismount attack out here. It's Y and B together. So if I do that, I'm just going to jump and attack and do whatever I'm going to do there. So you've got specific attacks that'll get you right into it. Half the time I just jump off and hit a weak slash, and I try and land on their back. So there are a lot of systems to Monster Hunter, I'm not going to lie. That's why this video wasn't exactly going to be short. Then you've still got high ranking, and then Artian armor, I think, is whatever they're calling it. I got to look that one up. You've got tempered monsters, and there's so many more things that are coming. But if you're new to Monster Hunter and you found this beneficial, drop a like below, leave a comment if you're an expert of any major stuff that I missed, because this is not going to be all inclusive. This is just a place to start, because then you've got potions and pods and so many other things and ammos and all that other stuff and mini weapon guides and other things as well. So let me know what you want to see from me, whether it's monster guides, weapon guides, builds, more tips at high rank, other things that I might not have mentioned. Throw all that stuff in the comments. If you want to find me, it's on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Patreon, Blue Sky. It's Ebontis everywhere. Any support you guys do, from likes, follows, subscribes, Patreon memberships on YouTube, whatever, all of that's always beneficial. Hopefully you found this one helpful. If you did, send it to friends who are playing, invite them in, and hope you guys are having a great time. I'm really enjoying this. Look for from me, and have yourself a great one.